So last night, I had dinner with 1,800 of my closest friends. All of us there to honor a really amazing man who probably doesn't really need an introduction. But it's my honor to introduce Roland Griffiths. Roland is truly a wise, generous, kind person, and he exemplifies what it is to live your values in all that you do. Dr. Roland Griffiths is professor in the Department of Psychiatry, Neurosciences, and the founding director of the Center for Psychedelics and Consciousness Research at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. His principal research focus has been on the behavioral and subjective effects of mood-altering drugs, and he's the author of 425 scientific publications and has trained more than 60 postdoctoral research fellows, and I'm sure has inspired so many more. More than 20 years ago, after starting on a regular meditation practice, Dr. Griffiths initiated the first study in decades to evaluate the effects of a high dose of classic psychedelic drugs in healthy, psychedelic-naive participants. That research showed that when administered to carefully screened and psychologically supported individuals, the psychedelic psilocybin produced substantial and sustained positive changes in moods, attitudes, and behavior. Published in 2006, that study, along with a series of later studies conducted by Dr. Griffiths and colleagues, is often cited for its role in the contemporary reemergence of the scientific and cultural interest in psychedelic compounds. In 2019, Dr. Griffiths established the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research, which is deeply engaged in developing new approaches to the treatment of a range of psychiatric conditions. At the same time, Dr. Griffiths has been keenly interested in following up on his previous studies of psychedelic occasioned transformative experiences in healthy participants and their important implications for the spirituality and human flourishing. With that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Roland Griffiths to the stage.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for being here. What a magnificent gathering. I'm filled with so much gratitude. Maps, Rick, Kevin, the dozens and dozens of support folks who have made this gathering possible, and to numerous dear friends who have gone to remarkable lengths to facilitate my attendance here, despite some diminishing physical and I'll also say mental capacity. So if there's some less than precision that comes out of me, I have a good excuse. But I am here fully with you in the field, so much so, never more so in my life. What I wanted, to speak about is what I feel to be most important, and that's psychedelics, spirituality, and then including these reflections, personal reflections, on mindfulness and mortality. So, as Amy mentioned, I've been conducting psychopharmacology research at Johns Hopkins for more than 50 years, 25 years ago, took up a meditation practice that I continue today, and have come to believe that there's something unique and profound to be discovered through these internal reflective practices, be it meditation, breath work, and with psychedelics. Early experiences I had in meditation made me deeply curious, coming out from a scientific reductionist background. And it made me curious about certain altered states of consciousness, and they felt profoundly meaningful to me. I couldn't even begin to understand them, but it was that curiosity that prompted my interest in conducting that first study published in 2006, which was rigorous as one can do, more rigorous one can do today given the culture and what we know. Was in psychedelic naive participants, showed a single dose of psilocybin under our classic supported conditions, occasioned remarkable experiences of a transcendent or mystical type, characterized we haven't worked out all the psychometrics of this. There are factors involved in this, but for me, I'll say the three principal pieces of this experience is this sense of connectedness, that we're unity, all is one, we're all in this together. There's something intensely precious beyond belief about that experience. If you want to put it in religious term, it's sacred. And then it's true, the noetic quality. It comes forth with a power of authoritative truth that for some simply can't be denied, and it's just fact. For a skeptic like me, I take that as a data point. But nonetheless, those are the features, and when you put together this sense of connectedness, this sense of preciousness, and the incredible sense that it's true, you've set the stage to change someone enduringly in a positive direction. These kinds of experiences can occur in the great majority of people under the right conditions. And our first study, and then replicated now time and time again over the last 20 years, show the basic robustness of this in the applications, both therapeutically and non-therapeutically. And it's much more complex than just a mystical experience. That the psychedelic experience has other features from which people can transform. And I'm not going to dwell on that, but just know that we all recognize that there can be very dark experiences that propel people to incredible growth of the same sort, actually, that the transcendent experiences do. But I think and what I want to talk to today, because we're doing a lot of therapeutic work, most of the research going on is focused on therapy reducing suffering, and good God, we need to reduce suffering, and the human condition can change enormously. From where I sit now, as I kind of look forward, that's great. Many of you are engaged in that. I'm confident that that's going to move forward. What's even more interesting to me, though, is what the potential transformative effects of these kinds of experiences are for humankind more broadly, for those who are considered to be well, whatever that means, but they're not overtly suffering, yet there's this huge upside potential in terms of what I'll call loosely spirituality. Sometimes I'll call it secular spirituality because I don't want to impose any beliefs on that. Well-being, with the accordant ethical and pro-social implications of that. And I think with that, I'm now going to turn science on you, and I can't resist showing data. I want to return to story at the end and the mortality piece, and I'm mindful that in the altered state of consciousness that I find myself under these conditions, this isn't as well organized. I haven't timed it down right. I may end up skipping through pieces here, but I'm also convinced that I have something that I really want to say and communicate to you. So one of the great pleasures is once we started this research, we built a team. We established our center at Johns Hopkins for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research. And it's an incredible center. Fred Barrett has recently taken over officially with a public announcement, unofficially earlier, as director of that center. He's incredible, a cognitive neuroscience scientist and a very capable leader, and we have an incredible number of faculty. And this is just our professional staff, many of whom, thanks to MAPS, have been invited to be here and are engaged. And so Fred is our center leader, but I also want to point out David Yaden, who has recently been appointed the first Roland Griffiths professor of psychedelic research on what we call secular spirituality and well-being. And it's actually that's going to be the focus of what I want to talk. David's brilliant. We raised considerable endowment funds for a research program. We aspired to raise more. But this, to me, well, the whole area is important. But being able to hand off batons to Fred and David it's just a great gift to me. So no, this is just to say we have done a lot of work at Hopkins. We initiated our first study in '99. We've done studies in psychedelic naive, experienced people, the meditators, religious professional studies I'm going to talk about because that has to do with the spirituality. But we have a whole variety of clinical studies ongoing in different disorders and a variety of survey studies. We're interested in basic mechanisms. There's so much empirical work to be done on this. So this is our classic setup. Of course, we're scratching the surface here, aren't we? It's kind of embarrassing that most of this work has been done with eye shades and headphones in a windowless room when we know there are all kinds of variations of these experiences. But this is the model. We're looking for tractable models. We get really orderly dose-related effects. This is psilocybin given orally over the course of an afternoon. In most In most participants, psilocybin produces these large increases, as I mentioned, in mystical type or transcendent type experiences, even on scales that measure those independently of psychedelic drugs. And this just shows dose-related effects of psilocybin on one of our measures, the mystical experience questionnaire. And there are other measures. The psychometric refinement of this will continue. There's no such be-all, end-all. But it's a robust effect. Now, for my scientific colleagues, telling them that we see increases in mystical experience sometimes gets us pretty close to being thrown out of the room. And it needn't be. I mean, it's ignorance on their part, frankly. But because you don't have to, mystical experience does not appeal directly to any supernatural or metaphysical things. All we're looking at is people's answers on a questionnaire. This is just simple empirical science of the type that's done all the time to evaluate subjective effects. And of course, I think we can recognize it shouldn't be branded as mystical experience. It's been described in these various fashions as conversion experiences, religious, peak, transcendental experiences for eons. So there's something there, and it's certainly not just psychedelics. And as I said, mystical questionnaires presently, it's a good measure. It will be dated and replaced. So don't want to pick that fight with colleagues, who are, I mean, that's why this area is so exciting. There's plenty to be done. But you give psilocybin in that room, and for me, the astonishing piece of it was months later, this is 1 month, where people are making the attributions to that experience that, here we have 80% saying it's in the top 5 most spiritually significant, personally meaningful, 90 are saying increased sense of well-being, they're endorsing positive behavioral change. These effects, and now focusing at therapeutic effects, are there depending on the target. What I want to focus on is spirituality and this pro-social, altruistic effects. This is just representative from dose effect studies showing increases in spirituality. This is dose-related increases. The types of things being tapped here are increased reverence, sacredness in daily life, gratitude for life, interconnectedness of all life, prayer, meditation, etc. And there's increase in that pro-social impulse. So people are claiming increased sensitivity to others, tolerance, love for others, social concern, need for service to others. Seems so important. And these effects are sustained. In fact, this is 14 months, but there have been follow-up studies. Well, Rick Doblin famously followed up the Good Friday experiment at 25 years. So something occurs. It's remembered long term. That is amazing, and that observation, when I first ran that study, just changed the course of my scientific interest. I switched from psychopharmacology generally to this. And people aren't just making this up. You can validate these kinds of reported changes with friends, family members, colleagues at work. So there's something real, important, pro-social, increased well-being that goes on. And furthermore, to a pretty good extent, the kind of transcendent experience we see predicts positive outcomes later, be it therapeutically or non-therapeutically in terms of attribution. So, and just think about the neuroscience and trying to figure out what the hell's going on at the brain level there acutely that predicts something that's going to show up 5 years later. I can tell you in psychopharmacology, there isn't any animal of this sort. Given hundreds of high-dose psychoactive drugs, and a week later, people may have a memory of it, but they have not been changed. That memory fades quickly. So psilocybin and meditation. So I told you I got interested in this because of meditation. We ran a study in psychedelic naive people willing to undertake a meditation practice. But why psychedelics and meditation? And my thought is that they can both be viewed, at least from where I sit, as complementary techniques for investigation of the very nature of mind. And there's some neuroimaging stuff that ties that together. But just consider for a moment the similarity between a psilocybin effect and a deep meditation effect. And that is that both can bring about a recognition of how it feels to embody the present moment intensely, dispassionately observe and let go of pain, fear, discomfort, transform conventional sense of self into something other than that, de-identify from the narrative structure of mind, recognize the mind's capable of revealing knowledge, insights, not readily otherwise accessible, and gain some kinds of sense of authoritative knowledge for this interconnectedness. So for me, entering into this from meditation, they rhyme, and that's really interesting. So this was our initial study, beginning meditators. They were psychedelic naive, 3 different groups. I'll not go into the design. I just want to cut to the chase here, and that is, so what happens if you give some people what amounts to a tiny dose of psilocybin, 2 sessions, another group 2 pretty substantial doses of psilocybin, and a third group that gets the 2 substantial doses of psilocybin plus additional integration and support. And now this is across the measures of interest to me. This is showing increased spirituality. So the red is showing these are groups of 25 that got very low doses of psilocybin, and this is this measure at 6 months. So we're looking at enduring changes here. You can see significant increases determined by psilocybin, and in many cases, further increases with support. And that happens with altruism, positive social effects, forgiveness, benevolence, motivation. And these are standard personality type measures, validated personality type measures. Interpersonal closeness, daily spiritual experience. What the study shows is that psilocybin can indeed occasion these experiences. There was a correlation, significant correlation between the mystical component and the degree of these changes. But the dose of psilocybin, much more than support, plays the leadership role in this. We then turn to long-term meditators. Well, okay, these people haven't meditated before. What about people who have meditated for tens or hundreds of thousands of hours and are, for the most part, psychedelic naive, or had they had an experience, it was decades earlier, and it wasn't playing a role. And we've done a study there. This is yet to be published. The psilocybin, as opposed to, in this case, a placebo, increases mystical experience, as we would expect. And psilocybin in these long-term meditators are, at 2 months, have all the same kind of attributes of spiritual significant personal meaning, increased life satisfaction, and they're reporting increases in their sitting and spiritual practices. So, and it needn't be so. When we went to recruit for this, there were some very well-known, prominent meditation teachers who absolutely refused to refer anyone because they felt that this could be harmful to spiritual practice. And the people in these studies concluded that that psilocybin was of value. However, they also underscored, and I believe this strongly, that psilocybin was not a replacement for the level of control and efficacy and really control that had been gained through the systematic practice of meditation. So it was a supplement, a really interesting supplement. And this is a study we'll be talking about in a breakout session after this, done at NYU and Johns Hopkins. These are religious leaders exposed to psilocybin, 2 doses, high doses, and we've sworn not to go public with any real results, so you won't get them from me here, other than to say that, yeah, we expect to publish within, hopefully, the next several months. Results are really interesting. I think the only thing that I will say, the results won't, for some, this was a totally unknown. What would happen to people who had made this commitment? And there was a question, would this go off the rails, right? Could someone totally lose their faith? Could they drop out of the ministry? They didn't. Psilocybin were felt to be among the most spiritually significant and personally meaningful experiences of their lifetimes, in spite of the fact they have dedicated their life to ministry. And in one or both sessions, they had profound, what they would call sacred experiences, out of the language of their own traditions. Running out of time, but I can't help it. We did a survey study about, and so now we're into surveys, not drug administrations, asking people, have they ever had an experience that someone might say was a personal encounter with ultimate reality or God, higher power. And we targeted 2 different groups. One who said they had taken a psychedelic and had such an experience, and another entirely different group that said, yeah, I've encountered God, but totally absent psychedelics. So what's going on? Wouldn't it be interesting to know how similar or dissimilar those experiences are? Well, the cohorts, this is the psilocybin and the non-drug group, are demographically different, as you might imagine. So the people who these are born again people, impassioned with their new awakening, They tend to be older, more female, more educated, etc. And they're different with respect to the best descriptor. So we said, have you had this kind of thing? And the non-drug group here, you can see in the right top, predominantly says that I encountered God. This is the best descriptor of what you encountered. Whereas the psychedelic group, on the other hand, predominantly, and going down there 56%, says what they encountered was ultimate reality. So you have to wonder, well, is God the same thing? Is ultimate reality? What are people thinking? So then we ask them, okay, independently of what you call it, what are the attributes of God or ultimate reality? And I love this. They're virtually identical. So we're talking semantics here. The psilocybin and the non-drug group are saying that what they encountered, felt to be encountered, was intelligent, sacred, benevolent, eternal, conscious, and it wasn't malicious or judgmental. Both had high scores on the mystical experience questionnaire, underscoring that these kinds of experiences and transformations are not specific to psychedelics. And of course, what this opens up is the whole area of studying naturalistic occurrences of this and then seeing how they come together. Brief digression into consciousness because it's so intimately connected with this. Well, what is consciousness? This phenomenological consciousness refers to this basic mental state. It's a subjective experience of what it is like to be an experiencing entity. And psychedelics produce profound effects of this sort. The word psychedelic even refers to consciousness. Colloquially, psychedelics are said to expand consciousness, but scientifically there is the notorious hard problem of consciousness that actually questions whether it's even solvable, and it's deep philosophically and scientifically, and we have no consensus on that. So one of the things we've become intrigued with is belief changes that occur after taking psychedelics as part of understanding mechanisms for behavioral change. And we're now publishing a number of things, different belief changes. I'm just going to focus in on the consciousness piece. These are online surveys. The data I'll present is a retrospective survey where people claim to have a belief-changing experience, not defined. And then we asked them a number of questions about what beliefs were changed, some of which had to do with consciousness. And this just shows ratings. So what people are being asked to is rate the extent to which you think different entities are conscious, are capable of consciousness, from going, the zero line is showing the difference between agreement and disagreement. This is before the experience. And on the leftmost dot is self. So this is attribution of consciousness to self, and astonishingly to me, and I would doubt it to be the case here, you can see there's some people who are not entirely sure that they're capable of being conscious. I don't get that. But the interesting thing, and it gives us the face validity here. You go to other humans, non-human primates, quadrupeds, insects, fungi, plants, inanimate natural objects like rocks, inanimate man-made objects, a couch or a car. And so you see the attribution of conscious fall over. So what do people report after a psychedelic experience? So this shifts, and it shifts across the board. So there's this broader attribution of consciousness across everything. The magnitude of this shift is related directly to the mystical experience component of that. We have since gone on and done this same study prospectively. The other one was done asking people afterwards and rating before and after. This is having people rate actually before the experience and then independently after. And I think that's really intriguing and relates to the theme here about spirituality and what we're doing. So, let me reorient. Yeah. So in my remaining few minutes, I'd like to share personal observations that bear on this topic of spirituality and mindfulness and mortality. So a year and a half ago, as some of you may know, I had a routine screening colonoscopy, believing myself to be perfectly healthy, awakening from anesthesia with the news that I likely had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. It continues to progress. Now, ironically, the very first therapeutic study we ran was in cancer patients who are anxious and depressed secondary to a life-threatening diagnosis. And I spent many hours at intake before and after because I'm just deeply curious what's on how people experience death. Now, these were all people who were in real distress, but it was an interesting inquiry to me because I didn't know. And so then the question is, where did I find myself immediately after my diagnosis? And so initially, it was disbelief. It can't be true. It's a dream. It's a proverbial bad trip. Over a few days, and quite quickly, I began to explore all of the kinds of psychological territories that one could inhabit, understandably, under that condition: depression, anxiety, fear, combat, resentment, denial, all of which seemed to me, on any reflection, to be both uncomfortable and unwise. So for me, I came quickly to recognize that what I had learned about the nature of mind from meditation and psychedelic research and experience is that we don't actually need to identify with thoughts or emotions as they arise, but instead, we can turn with great interest to investigate the present moment, and in this case, for me, cultivate gratitude for this astonishing mystery in which we find ourselves. And that has been my principal practice since the diagnosis, in partnership with my dear wife, Marla, and we're there. And it's been fantastic. But let's consider the human predicament from the perspective of our current best scientific understanding. So who are we? We're these highly evolved sentient creatures. We can see, hear, touch, feel, taste. We've developed remarkable technologies. We've developed language and mathematics and the scientific method for discovering something about the nature of reality. But then again, deeply mysterious to us is that we have this capacity to be aware that we're aware is the only thing we really know to be true if we reflect on it. And we're deeply ignorant scientifically about what's going on here. We don't have a coherent physics. We have the hard problem of consciousness. We certainly don't have a clue of how this larger project started, nor where it's going. Now, as a scientist, I have this very strong bias to believing that rigorous empirical research is our best shot at understanding the very nature of reality. And there are those who will argue otherwise, but no apologies, that's my belief. Empirical science is the best game in town. Not that we don't have lots to learn otherwise, and we're deeply respectful of that. So what we know now is that psychedelics can occasion high probability these profound awakening experiences, having meaning, having enduring consequences. They're strikingly similar to naturally occurring experiences. They have this sense of interconnectedness, this preciousness, this truth, authoritative truth value. They point strongly in the direction that they can produce enduring positive changes in pro-social and ethical attitudes. And my sense is that as we do these inquiries, be it in meditation or psychedelics, and we strip away and take a hard look at what's going on, we recognize the power of these experiences, and we wake up and have the potential to wake up to a sense of freedom, peace, joy, gratitude that sadly most of the world, I think, simply finds unimaginable. And it's accompanied by this additional urge toward mutual caretaking that is foundational, and the way I think about it, to our core ethical principles. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We are in this together. Let's take care of one another. So my contention is further rigorous research of the type that we're doing and David Yaden is going to be doing under the endowment represented a uniquely powerful tool with psychedelics to understand the nature of this. Psychedelics gives us a way of doing prospective studies, which you need to do if you're going to pull back the screens and find out controlling things. And it's uniquely powerful because it occasions these experiences at high probability and can be manipulated functionally. Now then, why is this important? Rick and I had a great discussion the other day about this. Well, we have rapidly growing technological threats, right? Nuclear weapons, bioweapons, AI risks. these are existential risks to us. And I've come to believe that this line of non-therapeutic research is not only incredibly important, but it actually may be ultimately important to the survival of our species. We're potentially we're in a potential race here. Now, Rick will tell you that threat is so high that we need to roll out in force as quickly as we can. And I will tell you, careful, we don't understand what this does and how it scales to culture and world, but that's the goal, right? We want people to come together. So for me, the psychological off-ramp from potential misery has been the cultivation of gratitude for the preciousness of life itself. I've told you it's been a gift, it's a blessing to me. And just at a personal note, I can't, although I'm in a remarkable state, unlike anything that I've ever experienced, and this is absent psychedelics and deep meditation, I can't know if I'm going to be able to maintain this. I'm humbled. I'm very humbled by what may be to come, but I can lean into my strong intention to continue to be deeply curious and joyfully celebrate with gratitude this preciousness of life. So my invitation to each of you here in this community and elsewhere is to join me. Let's join together in this celebration to stay awake to the sense of the profound preciousness, the interconnectedness. We're all in this together. The sense that there's something benevolent, meaningful, and purposeful about it, and that it feels so completely and authoritatively true. It's simply astonishingly beautiful. So join me. Thank you.